Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great week out there so far. There is a lot to talk about in this morning's video, and the tropics is obviously the big topic. There's multiple areas to watch for tropical development, and what we're going to do here is go over all model guidance. We'll compare it. We'll talk about the environmental background out here in the Atlantic and how it does support tropical activity, especially as we get over the next several days. So we're going to get very detailed. It'll be a long update. There'll be timestamps up. We'll first talk about an area a little bit closer to the lower 48, and then we'll switch gears and speak out on a little bit further out in the Atlantic, as there's multiple things we need to watch out there. So after that, we'll talk about today's weather, and then we'll get on with our day. If you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So as always, let's make sure this is going to work for us, and it is, so we're good to go. So we always start these updates on the tropics out with looking at the entire Atlantic. Can we see the pieces to the puzzle, if you will, out here in the Atlantic right now? Well, one thing is going on, and we have Tropical Storm Dexter, still a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm with us. This is forecast to become post-tropical. It actually will strengthen at some point, but it will lose a lot of its tropical characteristics as it just continues to go north and run into colder waters out here in the North Atlantic. So we'll get that back off your screen. The next area we're watching a little bit closer to home, which isn't doing a whole lot right now, is this area kind of right into here. It's actually lost some of its convection, and I mean that by you're not seeing those intense colors on your screen anymore like you see with Tropical Storm Dexter, for example. You know, the oranges, the reds, and then the blacks embedded into those two colors. This always indicates colder cloud tops, which means we have stronger convection, stronger shower and storm activity. And this is reflected by these colors that you're seeing on your screen: colder cloud tops, taller updrafts, stronger storms. So right now, I'm not seeing a whole lot of that with this, and this could kind of have something to do with some energy that could get going eventually into this area right here. But we do have a chance of tropical development sometime between now and the next several days. So it kind of could be a combination between this energy here and some frontal action right here with just a stalled frontal boundary that will provide enough lift for shower and storm activity over the open, warm waters off the coast of the southeast. And we need to watch the Gulf also. We're going to speak on all of this. There's a lot to talk about. So that's a little bit closer to home. The next thing we're watching is way out here in the Atlantic, the MDR, main development region. You can call it way out in the Atlantic or the tropical Atlantic. This area out here is typically a region of the Atlantic that doesn't normally get active until about the later portion of August, early September. Well, we're seeing signs as we're getting several days into August that things are starting to uptick in activity. Right now, nothing too crazy to circle. We do have some convection out here in the MDR, and we have a big tropical wave right here that's moving off Africa into the Atlantic right now, but there's nothing super organized, well put together, nothing that has a defined low-level circulation or feature out here. But this is definitely going to be a heavy topic in this morning's video and for the foreseeable future also, as there's a lot of signs on models that we're going to have something, maybe multiple tropical waves that develop and eventually could take that track we do not like to see, which is closer to land, that whether it's the Caribbean, the Gulf, or the lower 48. So that's what we're looking at right now, currently this morning. Now, I do want to give you a brief graphic on Tropical Storm Dexter. This is forecast to not really bother anybody except the fish out in the ocean, but it is a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm moving northeast at 12 miles per hour, and is forecast to become post-tropical here in the next 24, 48 hours or something. So the next name is Aaron, starts with an E. So that will be the next name that we will inevitably mention at some point. But this is the latest around 5 a.m. update from the National Hurricane Center. Of course, Dexter right here. This is our area right here that has a 30% chance to develop something tropical sometime between now and the next several days, basically. So it says a broad area of low pressure is forecast to develop in the next day or two, several hundred miles off the southeast coastline. So this is where we could have that kind of a frontal action that could develop into this area and eventually gain tropical characteristics. And we're going to speak on that first, and then this second, and potentially what comes behind this There's a wave located right around right here, even though this orange X does not reflect very well where the convection is right now in the Eastern Atlantic. But tropical wave right into here, we would say, and it's forecast to have a 50% chance to develop in this area right here in the orange into a tropical depression or a named storm sometime in the next 7 days. And anytime, like I said, I say a percent chance to develop, that means that there is a chance that it could become a tropical depression or a named storm. So sometimes I'll leave that hanging. I just say, hey, 50% chance to develop. And like I've had many comments in the past say, what do you mean by develop? And that's what it means. So I could see, and I always like to try to take a shot here, I could see another area of interest showing up behind this somewhere in this region in the coming day or two. And we're going to talk about why later into this video. So let's speak on a little bit closer to home. So this is closer to us in time, and quite literally in miles, it is much closer to us. So this is the latest Euro. We're going to start this off 48 hours from now, Thursday morning, August the 7th. The time frame's up here. Don't focus so much on Zulu time, the 12Z, but you can look at the day of the week, THU, Thursday this week. So you move this in time, you see a big blob of green, some splashes of yellow and orange right here. This is some sort of energy off the southeast coastline, and it doesn't look like much, like I said, just a blob of moisture. But as you continue to move into Friday, it's still hanging with us. It's right here, and it does look kind of put together, if you will, but that is some sort of lower pressure, and it could be at this point gaining some tropical characteristics. And as we move deeper into our Friday, it does try to develop something, and it's so weak it doesn't even reflect an L, though, on the Euro output here on Tropical Tidbits. But there is obviously a lower pressure here, probably on this particular model run, maybe around 1015, 1016 millibar low, which is a very low pressure. Remember, the lower that millibar number, the stronger the low pressure. But there is something here. Friday, getting into Saturday, some sort of tropical moisture right here. But the trend overnight has been, if this is going to develop, maybe it misses the coastline. That's not a forecast. That's just kind of the trend right now. Hard to even call that a trend. But if you continue to move forward here, I want to watch some energy over the northern Gulf also as we get into early next week. It's just a pattern that favors homegrown activity, meaning a lot of opportunities for stalled frontal boundaries. These drape too far south. This pops off a lot of convection, shower and storm activity generated by the lift of this frontal boundary. And this activity gets hung up over the open waters, or whether it's the Gulf or off the coast of the southeast, and all of a sudden it develops tropical characteristics, just like Dexter, just like Chantal, and we end up getting a named storm out of it. So, doesn't show much on the Euro. If you look at the low-level Vort energy, 850 millibars, 4,000 to 6,000 feet above the ocean in this case, you do see a little spin Thursday morning. And as we continue to move forward here, you can quite literally see it spinning cyclonically. And we get into Friday morning, we get into Saturday morning, and we do have some sort of low-level spin right off the North Carolina coastline right here. But you notice if you tune in like in last night's video, it had this going right into the South Carolina coastline. Now it's kind of scraping the Outer Banks and then heading out to sea. But regardless, it looks kind of scary on your screen, right? But it's not. It's a very weak low pressure. Now, you see some energy showing up over the Gulf. Now, let's see if that does something. And it kind of, a very broad spin shows up. So that's something to watch also. Now, what about the latest GFS? And by the way, this is still running, but we have enough of this run to show this so far. Thursday morning, not showing a whole lot. Friday morning, there's not a whole lot to show you. We got a burst of moisture right here, but then we get into Saturday, we get into Sunday. It doesn't really show much at all off the coast of the southeast. It does show a lot of moisture also, though, over the eastern Gulf. So, that's just things to watch, but there's not much to watch here. So the GFS really has kind of done away with, on this particular run, for something tropical developing. If you look at that low-level Vort, okay, best way to look at it when you can't see much on what I just showed you, it does show a little energy kind of strung out into here, but no real defined low-level circulation or anything like that. A little spin right here, but that ain't much at all. And yeah, it just doesn't do much. And I know you see this popping up on your screen here. We're going to talk about that here in a second. But I would say the model guidance has gotten a little bit more spread out on this homegrown signal, but the signal for a stronger low pressure is kind of weakened. But I'm going to talk about why this could still surprise us. And I will show you the icon. It does develop a low pressure. It's right here, still weak, like above a 1010 millibar low, but it doesn't even bother land. It forms a very weak low pressure and then heads right back out to sea, kind of like Dexter. Okay, now what about the latest Euro ensemble? Remember, this makes up 51 members. And on this particular output, it throws all the members that form into a decent and strength low pressure and throws them all on your screen. So please don't think when you see like 30 L's, there's 30 low pressures. That's not the case. It just throws all of them on the screen for us. So if we look at this when we're trying to find a deep signal for a tropical risk, and we get into Friday and then we get into Saturday, it does form many low pressures. Remember, I said that wrong. It does show a strong signal for a low pressure forming, with many showing up on the 51 member ensemble. But a lot of these are now turning north. You're not seeing hardly any of them running into the South Carolina, Georgia coastline. Now, you see a couple members sneaking up down here too. That's why we got to keep our eyes on the Gulf also. And you keep rolling, and that's about all she wrote. Now, just keep in mind that if anything hangs out off the coast, whether it's the Gulf coastline, the Southeast coastline, too long, everything points to tropical development. The Northern Gulf, very warm, 30, 31 degrees Celsius, even some areas 32. I mean, that's like the mid to upper 90s. And I'm sorry, that's very hot. Mid to upper 80s in Fahrenheit. In some cases, you are in the low 90s as far as the sea surface temperatures. And very warm with this Gulf Stream right here off the coast of the Southeast. I mean, well into the 80s. Sea surface temperatures support tropical development off the coast of the Southeast and over the Gulf. I mean, they do pretty much anywhere across this area of the Atlantic. Okay. Next thing I'll show you is that upper wind pattern. There's a ridge north of this system. This is creating divergence aloft. So this is where around where the Euro is trying to show a low pressure being at this time frame, about Thursday morning, 2 mornings from now, 48 hours. Okay, low pressure probably right into here, right? Very weak low pressure. And if you look, this is winds at about 250 millibars, so 35,000 feet up in the air, okay? And the blue areas, that's where you have stronger winds at that height of the atmosphere, right? So if you look at these little lines, they have little arrows embedded into them. Might be a little hard to see on your screen. They're kind of pushing out like this, right? Okay, and down here, it's getting pushed out like this, and it kind of circles around and jolts out like this. So there's a lot of air being pushed out away from the system. So that could allow for this thing to really get going, has a favorable upper wind pattern, and it's chilling over very warm sea surface temperatures. And this thing could pop off. It could be modeled horribly. And a lot of air, like I said, being dispersed out away from the system allows for more air to rise, continuous cycle. This thing, upper wind pattern wise, will be favorable. When air is being pushed out away from these systems on top of them, the upper levels, it allows for more air to rise through the middle of it. Rising air, shower and storm action. Shower and storm action leads to a more moist environment. Tropical systems like moist environment. They don't like dry air. So I hope that makes sense. So I think that we still need to watch this, even though we're waking up to less aggressive model guidance with this system off the coast of the Southeast. But the thing is it has to develop some sort of core. And then it can take advantage of the sea surface temperatures and then the upper wind pattern. Regardless, a lot of rain on the way with this pattern, even before any risk of tropical activity. So between now and about a week from today, multiple inches of rain from southeast Alabama, entire state of Florida, most of Georgia, up through the Carolinas, all the way from the southern VA. Few inches of rain. A lot of this will fall over the next 24 hours and falling right now, actually. So very wet pattern remains in place, guys, regardless of tropical development. So let's get all these off your screen here. Now let's switch gears and talk about way out in the Atlantic. Okay, a lot of chatter about this, and model guidance continues to disagree. So the main focus will be two tropical waves, right? So the first one is the one that has a 50% chance as of around the 5 a.m. update to develop within the next 7 days. That is this one right here. 10-12 millibar low, what does it do? It immediately gains latitude, finds a weakness in the steering currents, and really does not ever get together. It could eventually as it gets way up here, but this is the tropical wave that has that 50% chance to develop. Just looks like a blob of moisture, right? But there's a lot of moisture showing up down here. The Euro has been locked in on this for the last couple of days, and another tropical wave behind this developing. And I really think this will combine better with better forcing, a more favorable MJO pulse, just a corridor of rising air that will sweep across the Atlantic. You combine that with more favorable climate. We're getting deeper into August, and I really think it's the waves behind this that look more concerning. But I'm going to show you the GFS. It still likes that first wave. So on the latest Euro, we got about a week from today. We got 2 tropical waves, one right here and one right here. You could argue that's another one. But the first one, kind of right in here, becomes the dominant wave. And this is a strengthening tropical cyclone heading into the Lesser Antilles. And we switch gears, and there it is, sneaking into the Eastern Caribbean, just inside the Lesser Antilles, 10 days from now, pretty far out. And just like it showed in yesterday afternoon's run, this goes on and becomes a powerful hurricane in the Caribbean. It's further south than yesterday's run, but it's still a very unreliable time frame. But this has a strong to major hurricane sweeping through the Caribbean and then getting all the way into the Western Caribbean, where, of course, it'll bomb out and get incredibly strong. Any system that gets into this area is going to thrive because of just favorable upper wind patterns, slow steering currents, and just very warm sea surface temperature. So the Euro, once again, locked into the medium long range of a tropical wave developing to a tropical storm and eventually a hurricane. Okay, we don't want anything slipping inside here because that's going to hit somebody. It's going to inevitably hit somebody. What about the GFS? Okay, what does it do with that first wave? Model guidance just continues to disagree. This first wave, that, like I said, and I'm trying not to confuse you guys, so I keep reiterating the same information because of that. The first wave that has that 50% chance to develop does not slip the gap, but it does weaken if it even strengthens in the first place. We get into Saturday, we get into Sunday, we get into Monday. It's still a weak low pressure, but there is still a well intact tropical wave right here. About 6 days from now. There is energy behind this that the Euro likes a lot. The GFS does not like this energy. The GFS continues to really like this tropical wave, the first one. And let's move this in time. Here it is. This is 6 days from now. This is a week from today. Weak low, right? 1,009 millibar low. Not a big deal. But it gets into that area that I keep preaching on, that we don't want any tropical systems getting. We basically don't want any tropical systems getting in the Gulf, the Caribbean, or the Southwest Atlantic right now. But as soon as it gets into this area right here of the Atlantic, it pops off. And I think, do I think that this will get here? I don't know. Do I think if anything gets here that it will have an opportunity to strengthen pretty fast? Yes, I do. So, we get between day 7 and day 10. Right? I mean, we're getting into the middle portion of the month, and we have a strengthening hurricane off the coast of the southeast. And I only can go about 228 hours out, which is 9 to 10 days out. No point even going out any further in this. But, the run before it, it had it turning way out to sea pretty fast. The one before that had it in kind of the same place it is this morning. So, of course, the GFS is bouncing around. The Euro's locked into that second wave. But the GFS will not let go of the fact that this wave is going to survive the Atlantic and get into this area and get closer to landmass. So, this might go on to turn out to sea. It might go on to hit the southeast coastline. Regardless, it just doesn't matter right now because we're still so far out. What about the Euro AI model? What is it like? Well, it takes that first wave, gets it north, doesn't even really develop it. What about it takes the second wave, it lags it a little bit. It's right here. It's gaining a little bit more latitude. And then we switch it to this. Here it comes. We still have not figured out if the Euro AI model is a good model yet. I think it just could be used just like all other model guides, just as guidance, right? But it does the same thing. It takes that second wave, just like its brother, the Euro, and eventually strengthens it. And it's already hit multiple areas of land, the Turks, Caicos, and then Cuba, and kind of just does what the Euro does, but it's a little bit further north. So it likes the second wave. Now, what about Euro ensemble guidance? Remember, this makes up 51 members, throws all the low pressures that form on this output for us. Remember, there's not multiple low pressures. So we'll start off Friday, Heavy signal for a tropical wave right here. Ignore all this clutter here. We've already talked about this. But this is the first wave that has that 50% chance to develop. Heavy signal for this to probably turn further out to sea, most likely. But you still have many members in this region right here cruising south. So there's two things going on here. Tropical system right here based off this signal, and you're starting to see a lot of L's pop up down here, which signifies another system to the south. So we go about a week from today. The Euro likes the idea of if there is a tropical system that develops, it's going to turn out to sea. But then it gets aggressive with the signal with the wave. But you can see there's some low pressures over here. You can see there's some kind of in this area, some in this area. I mean, they're everywhere. And then it's like everything just goes crazy between day 7 and day 10. And we have a very loud signal into this region right here for just a lot of tropical wave activity that will have absolutely have a shot to develop. So that's a pretty heavy signal. It's clearly, Euro ensemble clearly likes the second wave. The GFS still is holding out hope for the second wave, for the first wave. Okay, that's the first wave. It just does not want to turn it fast. Remember, the GFS ensemble only makes up 21 members, so you're not going to see as many L's on your screen. And it does have a few members that get into the Southwest Atlantic, a few that turn, and even a few that kind of, get close to the Greater Antilles. And it does show a little signal for a wave behind this. And it looks a little bit louder than, say, and this run is having a hard time running through. But it's a little bit louder than, say, previous GFS runs for the second wave, but still not as there. But, just to discuss the environmental background here, listen, I mean, I don't even have to stay long with this. We just showed you this graphic several minutes ago. If anything gets anywhere in this area on the screen that you see in the Atlantic, sea surface temperatures support not only a tropical system, but a strengthening tropical system. We actually got some cooler waters down here in the central Caribbean. They're not cool, but they're just kind of low to mid 80s. But that'll support tropical development. It's just rocket fuel for this stuff in the Western Caribbean and the Gulf, and then in the Southwest Atlantic. Southwest Atlantic normally is not this warm. 30, 31 degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit. I mean, that's like the mid to upper 80s. 31, 32, you're getting into the upper 80s. You got some pockets. You probably have some buoys out here that are registering sea surface temperatures around 90, 91, maybe even 92 degrees. Around Key West, you probably got the mid 90s. So it's very warm. Okay, next thing you look at is the upper wind pattern again for this. And listen, light flow aloft out here. For example, this is that operational Euro that shows a hurricane eventually developing into the Caribbean. The reason you got that is because of this incredible upper wind pattern that would support a dangerous hurricane. And this is it. You got a 996 millibar low, and the outflow from this on top of the storm is pushing air out away from the system. And we call that, I mean, this almost looks like your classic ULAC, upper level anticyclone. It's basically when the winds are turning at the opposite direction anticyclonically than the cyclonic circulation of the mid to low level circulation. And you might think, well, two different wind speeds going at two different directions got to mess up the storm. Well, on top of the storm, it actually pushes air away. So, this, I'm not talking about this because I think there's going to be a huge storm system in the Caribbean. This is more of just kind of breaking down. It's kind of a science educational thing of explaining a great example of an upper wind pattern that could support a tropical system that could get strong very fast. And this is why the latest Euro goes crazy with a tropical wave, tropical storm eventually that sneaks into the Caribbean at day 10, day 11. Right here, even though you're seeing, and I talked about this in the beginning of the video, blues are really close to the storm, right? You're thinking, well, this has a lot of flow, probably disrupting the storm. Well, if you look right here, these lines with the arrows embedded into them are dispersing outward from the storm. Okay? And that would actually allow for tons of air to be just thrown out away from the storm in the upper levels. It rapidly allows for more air to rise, and it's just a constant cycle. So if that's happening, then rising air allows for shower and storm action, just like we're going to have that favorable MJO pulse of rising air over the Atlantic that's going to allow this boost of tropical activity, in my opinion. So when you have this rising air and all this storm activity, all that storm activity creates a very moist environment. So tropical systems like moist air. They don't like dry air. So this is just your classic ventilation look for an environment that, in this case, would really support just a cocooned moisture environment. And that's a great example of it right here. You see how this thing's just cocooned with deep moisture? I mean, there's dry air outside of it, but that dry air cannot get involved because there's such a favorable upper wind pattern with this. And if you keep it going, it just retains itself and it just plows right into any dry air involved because of the upper wind pattern. It's just so favorable, creating such a moist environment for this system. And that's just more of a scientific explanation of that. Now, the reason that the first wave has a higher chance to turn out to sea, it might not, is because there's just not an Atlantic high that's present. So we're not getting, and that's much bigger than the previous one I drew, but I like it. You're not getting a lot of these colors up here. And the first squiggly line I just drew in this area right here. So you don't have a big ridge of high pressure right here that's allowing these storms to sort of go like this. So there's a pretty substantial weakness in the pattern right here for that first wave to sort of turn and go like this. So not a huge Atlantic high here. So if we keep going here though, and we move forward, okay, we start to get deeper into the weekend, you can see there's a little bit more of a ridging influence that builds over the Atlantic. Not a big one by any means, but it's there. There's some ridging over the Atlantic. There's still weaknesses up here. And, this is going to allow for your flow for any wave that develops down here as we get into maybe a week from today to sort of travel like this because the flow around this weak ridging is just like that. But there's still not a strong high right here. But it's stronger in this time frame than it is for the first. So you keep going, and there's our wave forming. And, I'm actually surprised that this does not gain latitude because of such a weakness right here. Gain latitude as in this begin to really move north, especially as it strengthens. But, everything isn't at 500 millibars, which is what I'm showing you here. So there's steering currents at different levels of the atmosphere. And to avoid getting too detailed into all of that, we just kind of give you a more summed up version of this. But as you can tell, this wave, there's just light flow down here. So this thing's just cruising along. And I'm very surprised with this look right here that this thing does not turn north. Very surprised. Lack of a ridge right here, but instead it just continues to cruise this way. But then again, there could be other lower level ridge influences or upper level ridge influences that are steering it one way or the other. So, for example, let's just do this on the fly. We'll look at, let's look at this. Okay. Yeah. I mean, you really can't see it because it's creating such a one heck of its own environment, but it's going to be tough. We can preach on steering currents until the cows come home, but we really don't need to talk about that deeply, even though I will anyways, until something actually forms. But I think the common theme with, the pattern out there is right now there isn't a huge ridge out there, but it depends on where these tropical systems really strengthen also. So enough of that. Let's continue to move forward. Today's forecast, I left you hanging yesterday morning. Just ran out of time, but we do have some moisture over the southeast getting into the mid-Atlantic. We got some moisture hanging out over the Gulf coastline. And, this will be the common theme for the rest of the week, I think. We got some moisture on top of this ridge up here across Montana and the Dakotas, a little bit of moisture and shower and storm activity in northern Minnesota, but the middle of the country pretty quiet, out west pretty quiet. Watches, warnings, and advisories, red flag warnings in the hot pink, extreme heat warnings in the purple, heat advisories in the orange, flood watches up for a good chunk of Georgia and areas of Alabama, and the risk of severe weather today. We have a level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather across areas of the Dakotas, and the marginal risk around that tornado threat is at a 5% risk in these areas. Okay, so be mindful of that. And then the hail threat is at a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger in these areas. And the wind threat, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. The excessive rainfall outlook, we do have a 15% risk of flash flooding for areas like Columbus through Macon, Augusta, down to Savannah to Columbia, Greenville, Spartanburg, Charlotte. So watch out for flash flooding in these areas for today. And then let's talk a little bit about this smoke. There's been a lot of chatter about this in the comments. I do apologize for leaving you guys hanging. So because we've had such a dip in the jet over the Northeast, this allowed to pull any kind of Canadian wildfire smoke further to the south. And when we have that dip in the jet, the wind flow sags to the south. So that's why we've had a lot of smoke in these areas. And I think, based off, and I'm not an expert with smoke, guys. All I can really tell you is how the upper wind pattern is steering the smoke. And what I can say is you're still going to have some smoky times probably across the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes region, and areas of New England for today. So go on and be aware of that. It does look like it's kind of retreating because a different pattern is settling in, but you're still going to be dealing with smoke over the next 24 hours. So the southeast today, a lot of moisture will continue to surge from southwest to northeast across these areas. We get into this afternoon, a lot of storm action across southwest Georgia, the panhandle of Florida, areas of southern Alabama. We got rain showers across the Carolinas, and we continue to get storms that develop down here, especially south of this CAD boundary. It's just another soggy, rainy, cool day. It's been an incredibly cool start to August, and a cool week will continue for these areas. And rainfall between now and the next 36 hours, 3 inches of rain could be possible in Greenville, about an inch in Columbia. And this is the rest of Georgia and South Carolina. And then we take it up a little bit further to the north. A lot of rain in the Piedmont, North Carolina. Even a good bit of rain up into areas of southwest Virginia. So northeast today. A little bit of thunderstorm activity possible in the Adirondacks and interior areas of Vermont, New Hampshire. So be mindful of a storm. Elsewhere, looks pretty quiet, guys. Not a lot to speak on. And then the south central U.S., it's quiet here too. A little bit of tropical downpour activity for southeast Louisiana, but outside of that, hey, quiet day. Enjoy your weather. And then we look at the north central U.S. We got some storms that will move over the Dakotas. These will pack a punch. This is around about lunchtime, 1 p.m. And then more storms could fire behind this. And we could have a supercell or two, in South Dakota especially. You can see this lone cell around 9, 10 o'clock tonight. So be aware of strong to severe storms across all the Dakotas for this afternoon into tonight. So, and then out west, this is what you're looking at. Just looks like we're getting the return of the cloudy, rainy season up in Seattle. Looks like we got a rainstorm that is about to move in later tonight. So if you like a rainy night up here in this area, you're going to have one later tonight and then wake up to some rainy conditions up here in the Pacific Northwest. Temperatures, you still got this pocket of cool air. If you can get out of the way of this rain and cloud cover, you will warm up into the 80s and maybe even low 90s. But if you're going to be socked in clouds and rain, your temperatures will struggle to get out the 60s once again for today across areas of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina, and even up into Virginia. Pretty wild stuff. I mean, I've only had highs in the 70s the last few days. And I mean, it's just been nice. I like weather like this. The Northeast, 70s and 80s. But, it's pretty pleasant across the upper Midwest. Not hot one way or the other. Heat is spiking up into Nebraska and South Dakota, though. The high plains, especially 90s, upper 90s, maybe even 100-degree triple digits. I can't talk. Triple digits reading or two out here. Hot across the Southwest. Nothing too bad across the North. Whew. That's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate the support lately. Videos have definitely been getting, a decent amount more views. So appreciate y'all tuning in. And I hope you're getting a lot from the videos. And yeah, that's all I got. Thank y'all for, we've had a few feisty comments lately. But all in all, hasn't been too bad. I expect that to come. But I do appreciate some people stepping in, almost defending me and things like that, that's just going to happen with a YouTube channel. So God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk again soon. I do want to mention our first soccer practice is tonight if it doesn't get canceled. So If I do get a video in tonight, it will drop much later. So God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon.